Hey 3D students, let's learn about your project, which is called Telling Dwellings. Basically, how do you tell a story using a 3D form? Let's do some thinking first. So, in terms of stories, a story is a narrative, right? You're telling somebody a story, but there are actually different types of stories. There are existing stories, which are based on movies, books, historical moments. Maybe the story is in honor of somebody. It's a fairy tale that we know of, or maybe it's a story based on a current event or an issue. Stories can be made up as well, which means you completely make up the story yourself. And there are also personal stories, such as a special interest or hobby that you have, a memory that you associate. Maybe it's a story about a favorite place you've been to. Maybe it's a story about your favorite things or a story of your hopes and dreams for the future. This is our project. It's called Telling Dwellings. It's a slab-based project. The lesson objectives are you're going to create a freestanding ceramic house made of slabs that tells a story. So the house is going to tell a story visually. We're using the slab technique for the construction of the house. Here's a few examples of existing stories. If you do a research, there's a lot of existing stories, but there's, for example, just stories from books such as The Telltale Heart, which is by Edgar Allan Poe. That is a poem. There is The Little Prince. There's also A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. Those are considered stories. There's also fairy tales, stories that we might associate more with Disney, for example, such as Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, Little Red Riding Hood, that is a fairy tale, and The Little Mermaid. Yes, it's a Disney film, but it is based off of a fairy tale. And then there are stories that we are aware of, such as the Star Wars series, right? Star Wars is considered stories, right? It's science fiction. Or Harry Potter. Harry Potter is a book. Yes, it's stories, but they're stories about an imaginative place. And even if you look into Greek mythology, that is full of stories. Now, examples of personal stories, again, they're going to relate to you because it's personal, but let's say your story is about a family vacation you went on, or when you moved to a new place. Maybe you moved to a new country, a new town, a new city, or when you adopted your family pet, right? Maybe there's a story associated with that moment. Maybe something you experienced as a child, such as going to a playground or hanging out with your friends. Your favorite sports teams, you can focus on a personal story related to that because, again, that's focused on an interest. Or maybe your dreams for your future career, right? That is a personal story. Or a story about a special interest or a talent that you have. Lots of possibilities for personal stories. Now, this example here is a ceramic sculpture. It's called Tree of Life, which is actually common in Mexican culture. This traditionally represents the myth of Adam and Eve's banishment from Earth, Adam and Eve, which are sourced from the Bible. But this type of sculpture can also represent the fertility of Earth because Tree of Life, right? Where does life come from? Tree of Life sculptures can also represent the afterlife and our connection between heaven and earth. Now, these are some examples of ceramic houses. They may not tell a story per se, but we can look at them in terms of technique and the details they were able to include. So we're just looking at lots of examples here. You're going to have access to more examples to view, but lots of possibilities. Now, what's cool about this design is it has a tall part and then it has very long sides of the roof. So this is totally doable in terms of a house. This is the same house, but just with viewed the front and back. So you can see how they were able to design it. So it looks like it's made of a series of buildings and it's twisting inward. So it's kind of like a box, but again, we're treating it as a house. Now, what's cool about this one is this birdhouse here. It's a birdhouse. It's been glazed, but the details on the roof are really interesting. Now your house can use a lot of negative space. For example, these very big windows here, these are piercings. This house was definitely inspired by Studio Ghibli. Studio Ghibli is also a form of stories. Your ceramic house can also just have a typical flat roof, could have a pointed roof. The roof can also be covered in leaves or trees perhaps, right? This is the view of when it was bisque fired, and here's a view of it from above. Your ceramic house can also be made of different sections. This student really looked at different architectural features of houses. And these ceramic houses have very tall roofs. They also are made of 4 sides, but you can see the difference, but the variety that you can achieve using the clay and the different tools that we have. Now, this is poor examples because one, they're poorly made, but that's not quite what we're doing. Okay, we're going to go beyond this example here. Now, when you're thinking about your possible design of your ceramic house, you need to think about what kind of story do you want to tell? Do you want it to be personal, an existing story, or do you want it to be something just completely made up? And then you have to think about the design of your house as well. What's it going to look like? What forms, what shapes are you going to use? So we're going to start with a mind map. Now let's review the house expectations. The design must tell a story. And it's being built using slab construction, okay? So we are using slabs to create the house. The design must include a roof of some sort. We're using paper templates to help us create the slabs. And it should be well constructed, as in we use beveling, scoring and slipping, we're blending the seams together, all those things that you've already learned about in our previous lesson. Some other project requirements. In terms of height, your house should be between 4 to 6 inches tall. The width of the house should be about 3 to 6 inches wide, and the depth or length of the house should be about 4 to 6 inches. And I have a diagram right here to demonstrate what I mean by height, width, and depth. The walls of your house should be about 1/4 to 1/2 inch thick. Since you're going to be using those wooden slats to roll out your slabs, this should be pretty easy to achieve. We need at least 3 different textures to be used on your house. Smooth doesn't count because smooth is the default of your slab before you add textures. At least 3 shapes are cut out, which are our piercings, and at least 3 elements should be used on the surface, right? At least 3 3D attachments on the surface. Those are your appliques. That does not include the roof though. Now we're going to move on to creating a plan for your house. With your sketches, you need to be able to demonstrate what story are you telling with your dwelling, what form or templates are you going to use, and what details and textures do you need. So your house will require textures, and so the textures are the details. This is what makes the ceramic house look fabulous. It does take time to add details, but the details are what make your art pop and what it makes look unique, right? We want your house to look unique and different. So we're going to look at student examples to see what's possible, and then you're going to be moving on to creating a front view and side view sketch of your house.